Good morning. My name is Catherine. I am 33 years old and I have hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, as well as chronic pain, migraines, and chronic fatigue. I was diagnosed with hEDS in 2007 at the Montreal Children's Hospital in the genetics department by Dr. Laura Russell, after nearly a decade of searching for answers. I was kept as a patient at the Children's Hospital for an additional 9 months after turning 18 because I had been on the waiting list for genetics. My father was diagnosed at the same appointment, and my sister was diagnosed a couple months later. While talking about our family history, it was presumed that both my paternal grandmother and great-grandmother also had hEDS. My grandmother was alive at the time, but her condition had deteriorated enough that it was not possible to do a physical examination. I was both relieved and frustrated upon receiving my diagnosis. Relieved to finally have a reason and a name for all of my health problems. Frustrated because when I asked, "What's next? What do I do to get better or maintain my health as is?" I was told, "Nothing. There is no other information I can offer you." I am happy to know that there is a lot more information available now compared to then for the newly diagnosed and those needing more information on their own health. I attended my first EDNF, now the Ehlers-Danlos Society conference in 2010. My first ILC conference was in 2014. The conference in 2010 was my first experience meeting other EDSers, and it was amazing to be almost 500 in one place. Before that summer, I hadn't met anyone else with EDS outside of my family. Conferences like that one and the one that the ILC Foundation run have a significant impact on the quality of life and care we receive. I am hopeful that Dr. Moreau's research on chronic pain and the comorbid conditions will bring greater understanding about painful hereditary conditions like Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. Before deciding to actually get pregnant, I looked online to see what information was available. More than a decade after my original diagnosis, there was significantly more information online and I was better able to understand what I was reading. I also spoke with the 2 women I am friends with who have hypermobile EDS and children. Neither were diagnosed at the time of their pregnancies, but it was still very helpful to speak with them and have a general idea of what could go wrong and what I could do to possibly mitigate those problems. I was lucky enough to be allowed to have my husband or someone else accompany me to most of my doctor's appointments because I was unable to propel my wheelchair. Whoever came with me took notes so that I wouldn't forget anything. During the first 16 weeks of pregnancy, I was extremely nauseated and had higher levels of pain throughout my body. My normal is a range of 4 to 7 on the pain scale. I had normal levels of pain for about 12 weeks. I was happy and mostly comfortable. The morning I hit 30 weeks pregnant, the excruciating pain came out of nowhere. One night I went to sleep, and the next morning my entire body felt like I'd been run over by a truck. My lower back, hips, and knees were worse off, but my ribs and ankles were also screaming in pain. At 37 weeks pregnant, I was offered an induction for 39 weeks due to extreme pain whenever I tried to do anything other than breathe and sit down in one particular chair. I spoke with the anesthesiologist the week before I was induced, and we covered both my EDS and my history of resistance to local anesthetics. They were cautiously optimistic that an epidural would work. I was also warned that the anesthesiologist on call might refuse to perform one. A couple weeks before giving birth, I had written down one-page information sheet, mainly bullet points on EDS and how it affects me. I brought copies with me and asked every nurse and doctor to read it. To my pleasant surprise, because so far it's been rare to find anyone who took me seriously, they actually did. And a couple mentioned how helpful it was that I had brought the paper. I was given medication to induce labor. I tried to labor without an epidural for a few hours and bounce on one of those giant exercise balls, but I kept slipping off and almost falling over when standing, so the nurse suggested I labor in bed instead. The tub was not available and the shower was not working in my room. My first epidural placement went smoothly. It took a while to kick in, but then everything was good for about 3 hours. I was given medication to speed up contractions, which had slowed, and about 15 minutes later, I started to be able to feel my legs and feet, and I could move them. Shortly afterwards, I started to feel the excruciating pain from my contractions in my lower back and hips. The epidural's dosage was increased several times, but I could still move my legs and could feel every contraction. When we reached the limit for my height and weight, the head of the department was called in to place a second epidural. He mentioned that maybe something had been bumped or moved a tiny bit, but it also didn't look like it. He said that sometimes epidurals don't work on EDSers. I was instructed to lie on my side in hopes that gravity would help the medication move to the side that hurt more. It worked for close to an hour. After that, I felt everything again, and I definitely remember screaming. The nursing staff was great before, during, and after. I don't remember much about the doctors who visited, as they were there for quick checkups, and I was in a lot of pain. I'm really glad that my labor only lasted 20 hours and not longer. I consider my recovery difficult, but it wasn't from a medical's perspective. My pain levels were very high for close to 3 months afterwards. The muscles in my legs were so stiff and my joints particularly unstable, it was incredibly difficult to walk. My iron levels dropped almost low enough to need a transfusion. I took liquid iron for 5 months to get my levels back to the low normal they usually are. The stitches were very uncomfortable, but I healed well and I don't have diastasis recti. My family doctor suggested I work with a pelvic floor physical therapist as a preventative measure. I met with a colleague of my regular physiotherapist and have been continuing to meet with her every few months since the birth of my son. This has helped my SI joint and overall health for the last 2 years. I had planned on starting the physio sooner, but that pandemic hit a week before my original appointment, and after that I stayed home except for prenatal doctor's appointments. Now I'll be speaking about my day-to-day life. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning before moving anything is a quick check to make sure that everything is still in place, that I haven't dislocated or subluxed anything in my sleep. I have a pillow that goes under my knees, and occasionally my legs will slip off and my hip or knee won't be in quite the right place. At the end of the day, I'm so exhausted that I'll sit down and I won't be able to move for a while. The main assistive devices that I use currently are 2 ankle-foot orthotics, a pair of Bauer-Feind articulated knee braces, and a set of Canadian crutches with a full cuff and spongy hand grips. They're great. Each one only weighs about 1.1 pound instead of 2, which places significantly less strain on my upper body. The crutches are a big improvement over the 2 canes I was using, which I kept dropping and then falling down. They were special order from France, and I don't know what I'm going to do when I need a new pair. The company we ordered them from doesn't seem to exist anymore. I've had them for about 8 years. I also have a wheelchair and a drawer full of wrist braces, slings, and soft ankle braces. It took me a long time to find the right braces for myself. I first heard about the Bauer-Feind articulated knee braces at an EDS conference, and after returning home, spoke with the company I received my AFOs from. They sent me to see an orthopedist, and he agreed that the soft knee braces would be helpful. The wheelchair I use has 4 small wheels because I cannot push myself forwards in a regular manual wheelchair. I have neither the strength nor the ability to keep my joints in place while pushing. When we use the wheelchair for long family walks, my husband will push, and I have a carrier to hold my son. I try not to use my assistive devices in the house when I can manage to help maintain my current level of mobility. When I need a bit of help, I use some combination of crutches, knee braces, and AFOs. When leaving the house, I always wear my AFOs, as I fall frequently when wearing shoes without them. I add my knee braces and crutches if I need to be upright for any length of time, or use my wheelchair instead. When I was pregnant, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to match my abilities to my surroundings. I am short, and my legs are often unstable, and my arms are not great at holding onto anything heavy. I went to several stores to try and figure out how on earth I was going to be able to lift a baby into and out of a crib. I end up finding a great mini crib that folds down on one side. It's actually meant for daycares to help prevent back strain for the staff members who have to constantly pick up and put down little babies and kids for nap time. I was almost tall enough to reach in and get my baby while sitting on a chair next to the crib. I circumvented this problem by having a couple books under the cushion so that I was tall enough. The only downside to this crib for me is that you need 2 hands to unlock it, one on either end of the crib. I spent a long time looking for strollers. I found most to be unstable when you need to lean on them. I ended up choosing one with 4 wheels based on my need to lean on something when I'm having a difficult time walking. It's at a great height for me, so that if the basket underneath is somewhat heavy, I can use it the way platform crutches should have been used. The umbrella stroller I've been using the last few months weighs next to nothing, but it's being used as a walker when my son is in it and wants to go to the park around the corner. There is another park about 11 minutes away that would be perfect to visit, but I can't walk far enough to make it there, so my son goes with his father. I have a love-hate relationship with my son's high chair. I chose it because it becomes two separate pieces, a booster seat with legs and a chair that straps onto a regular dining room chair. I am happy that my son is now big enough to climb into the booster seat by himself, and I hate the pain unbuckling him causes my hands. In particular, my left thumb keeps giving out. It's not as bad as his car seat, but it's still painful. When my son was a newborn, my husband had 6 weeks off work, which was great. My mom came every afternoon for the first 4 weeks so that we could both have a nap, which was very helpful since no one was sleeping much. For the first 6 months of my son's life, he barely slept, which, while not unusual for newborns, started to wear me down quickly. I've noticed that when my sleep is interrupted, I'm in significantly more pain. So even now, when he usually sleeps through the night, if I have to get up at 3 a.m., or he decides to start his day at 5 instead of 7:30, my joints hurt more, and I'm in a bad mood. I've also noticed that when I'm up for 2 hours in the middle of the night, I'm more likely to be dizzy in the morning. When my son was under a year old, we spent a lot of time on the floor in the living room or my bed. Everything I would need was in easy reach because it was too difficult to get up and down over and over. We had a similar problem earlier this year with his floor bed. We ended up putting a box spring under his mattress and buying a guardrail because it was too difficult for me to lie down with him at nap time and bedtime and then have to get back up. We were living in a condo and there were 4 doors that I had to get through with a stroller and no button to hold the doors before making it outside. That was next to impossible for me to manage on my own, so we spent a lot of time on the balcony when the weather was nice. Now that we live in a house, I think it's great to only have 1 door between me and the outside. We have been striving to teach our son to be as independent as possible while taking his age into consideration. He can put on and take off his shoes and boots, and most of the time they're on the proper feet. He can put on his hat and 1 mitten. He likes to put his pants on all by himself. This has helped me significantly. He fights me less, which means less strain on my joints. On good days, we go to the park, which is just around the corner from our house, and bring a snack. My son is now able to go down the front and back steps and climb into his umbrella stroller all on his own. He's quite proud of himself, and my knees and shoulders are happy too. On bad days, we stay inside to play or go to the backyard if I can manage the 3 steps down. On really bad days, when I'm having a flare-up, someone watches him and I stay in bed. Most often, it's my husband, but sometimes my dad or mother-in-law. In July of 2021, I had a virus in my inner ear that caused extreme vertigo. The ENT that I saw recommended I see a vestibular physical therapist, and I was delighted to find out she knew a lot about hEDS. Some days I'm particularly dizzy. On those days, I need more help from my family because the world is wobbly and my legs don't always cooperate. It's difficult to chase after a toddler when you can't see straight. On the rare days we aren't able to get help, my son and I rest on the couch and listen to a lot of music and audiobooks, and he watches educational TV. These are all things that can be done with my eyes closed. I have help 3 mornings a week. My dad or mother-in-law come and play with their grandson for a couple hours so that I can sleep, rest, or fold laundry by myself. Having help has made a huge difference. I am better able to care for my son on a day-to-day basis because of the help from family. Some days are very difficult, but overall I am happy with my choice to have 1 child. I love my little family. It is said that it takes a village to raise a child, and I am grateful for my village and for the work that the ILC Foundation and Dr. Moho are doing. Thank you.